I bought a Tapper colt at the Keeneland September sale and incredibly excited about that purchase. It was a colt that had plenty of size and scope and carried himself with a real presence that drew me to him.
I bought a Tapper colt out of Black Coronas at the Phasey 10th and July sale, out of a Curlin mare, big beautiful horse. We're real excited about him coming up in the spring.
Taprit, standing at Gainesway.
Well, the last of the 170-point races on the road to the Kentucky Derby are this weekend. There's 3 of them. They're worth 100 for first, 40 for second. And Marty McGee and I are going to take a look at all 3 of them. I'm Jay Privman, joined by Marty McGee, who will be at the Bluegrass Stakes. I will be at the Santa Anita Derby, and our colleague Dave Grenning will be at the Wood Memorial. But Marty and I are going to take a look at all 3 races. And Marty, let's start with the race you're going to be at, the Bluegrass Stakes, which I think has a really good field. 12 were entered in this race, with Smile Happy, who once upon a time was favored on the Derby Watch Top 20, heading up the field, he and Zandon. Give me your thoughts on those 2.
Well, Smile Happy had been the I think he was the individual favorite in 1 or 2 of the Derby future wager bets offered by Churchill Downs, Jay. And the only reason he's not the favorite now is because a couple of horses have done a little bit better than him in the meantime. But this is his chance to shine. And the Bluegrass, which had been a grade 2 for 5 years, is now back to a grade 1. And boy, wouldn't this be a good opportunity for one of these horses to emerge out of here and do well. Smile Happy really showed some great kick, not only in the Kentucky Jockey Club, but the way he closed in the Risen Star, which had been his last race. He is the 9-5 morning line favorite in a field of 12 3-year-olds in the Bluegrass. Second choice is Zandon at 5-2 for Chad Brown, and third choice is Emmanuel at 5-1 on the Keeneland line. And they are 3 of the principals, all on our Derby Watch Top 20, who are in the Bluegrass as main contenders.
Right, and Smile Happy and Zandon both exiting the Risen Star, which has proven to be a very productive race. Epicenter obviously came out of that to win the Louisiana Derby. Marty, I thought both Smile Happy and Zandon ran well in that race. They got good figures. They ran on well at the end. And I'm looking for both of them to perform well on Saturday in the Bluegrass. I'm slightly more partial to Zandon. I like both of these horses, but I'm kind of on Team Zandon for Saturday. And you mentioned also Emmanuel, who's coming out of the Fountain of Youth Stakes in Florida in his most recent start. Had kind of a compromised trip in that race, was wide, made an early run into that race. How do you think he stacks up against the big 2?
I'm getting ready to make my Hermes picks for the Saturday editions of Daily Racing Form, Jay, and I'm going to pick Emmanuel. That's what I think of him, with Smile Happy second and Zandon third. But I think this is the chance for Emmanuel to maybe get first run on those 2 back runners and go and show what he can do.
Well, that's the Bluegrass Stakes on Saturday, which, as Marty mentioned, 3 of our Derby Watch Top 20 members trying to move on to the Kentucky Derby in that race. Marty will be there. I'll be at the Santa Anita Derby, which drew a field of 6 for its running on Saturday. The heavyweights in that race are Messier and Forbidden Kingdom, both coming off 2-turn stakes victories at Santa Anita in their previous starts, both looking to have big performances to move on to the Kentucky Derby. Marty, we'll start with Forbidden Kingdom, who won the San Felipe in his last start. I was a little bit skeptical about his ability to handle 2 turns going into that race, but he certainly proved me wrong. He set fast fractions and kept on going, but now he's got to stretch out another 16th of a mile to a mile and an eighth, and if he's successful Saturday, another furlong after that to a mile and a quarter. What do you think of him being able to do all that?
I don't know, because there's going to be a lot of other challenging speed against him come Derby time, Jay. I don't know if in a short field, if he is going to be able to walk the dog again the way he has especially in the San Felipe win that he had. But if Messier, coming off that giant win in the Lewis, is able to stick with him, it should be a good horse race. You and I talked about what the final odds will probably be, probably something like 4-5 on Forbidden Kingdom and even money or 6-5 on Messier. But it does shape up as a 2-horse race. I don't know if it ends up being a one-sided affair like all the Southern California preps have been thus far. I don't know what we will be able to glean from that, but nonetheless, it does look like both of these horses do belong in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, Messier coming off, as Marty mentioned, that big run in the Robert Lewis, was purposely kept out of the San Felipe to await this race. And obviously the news regarding him is this will be his first start since Tim Yakteen has taken over as his trainer, with Bob Baffert, his previous trainer, having to now serve a suspension emanating from last year's Kentucky Derby. And they're the big two in that race. There's 4 others that are going to try and knock them off. The other race is in New York, and that's the Wood Memorial. And kind of an interesting race here. Several horses from our Derby Watch Top 20 are competing in it. Let's start, Marty, with Morello, who comes off a win in the Gotham in his most recent start. And this horse, to me, has done nothing wrong. He's obviously going to have to stretch out here, but I think he's capable of doing it. What do you think of Morello?
I think he could in this particular race, though, Jay. But, again, there's a lot of other speed coming from other regions of the country, namely the horses we just talked about, Forbidden Kingdom, some of the horses from Florida. So whether or not he's going to be able to use the same kind of tactics with success is open to scrutiny. But, again, he's done nothing wrong, and I think he might have a good chance in this race. But there are a couple of horses in here who could give him a real challenge, those being Early Voting and, of course, Mo Donegal from the Pletcher Barn.
Right, and speaking of Early Voting, let's take a look at his race. Winning the Withers in his most recent start. He's 2 for 2. The Withers got a adjusted Beyer speed figure of 87 after several horses in that race came back to perform well. As you mentioned, Marty, it looks like he and Mo Donegal are going to be forwardly placed early in this race. I'm still not all in on Early Voting. Maybe I've overlooked him, but I don't know that he's quite as good as some of the others in here. But he certainly has room to improve. He's only run 2 times. What do you think of him?
Well, I mean, I was kind of surprised after the Withers that Chad Brown said, well, we're going to wait until the Wood Memorial. It seemed like the horse Early Voting probably could have used a little more experience in between, but Chad is headed for the Hall of Fame, and I'm not. So, we'll let him make those kind of calls. But clearly this is a major test for Early Voting in terms of whether or not he can go this kind of distance.
Mo Donegal is returning to the scene of his biggest win in the Remsen last fall. He ran once earlier this year in the Holy Bull at Gulfstream. You were at that race. I thought he ran on well in that race. And as I mentioned earlier in regards to the Bluegrass, I'm a big fan of Zandon. And if I'm a big fan of Zandon, well, I've got to be a big fan of Mo Donegal in the Wood Memorial on Saturday. He's my pick to win it, Marty. What do you think of Mo Donegal?
Yeah, he really ran on well in the Holy Bull, and then he was actually entered in the Fountain of Youth, but he drew the 12 hole, and the decision was made anyway, in that he came up with a slight temperature. He has since recovered, had a number of works for Todd Pletcher at Palm Beach Downs. So they're all set. I'm sure they're excited. If he runs the way he did in the Remsen and the way he closed in the Holy Bull, he's going to be tough.
Well, that's our look at the 3 point scoring races for this weekend. All of them 170 points overall, with 100 to the winner. And it's the last of those races. After this weekend, the only point scoring race that'll be remaining is the Lexington Stakes at Keeneland. That's only worth 20 points to the winner. So this is the big weekend that's coming up. There was a big weekend last weekend as well, with 3 other races that were worth 170 points overall. And you can find a video of Marty and I recapping those races and how it impacted our Derby Watch Top 20 also here at DRF.com. But for now, that's all we've got for you. For Marty McGee, I'm Jay Privman. We'll see you next week.